Title: The Human WarArmda so powerful, it was banned. Part 1. Far out on the edge of known space, where stars grew thin and silence stretched for light years, a small human outpost clung to life around a fading red sun. The planet below was dry and cracked, its oceans long gone, but the orbital dock still turned slowly in the dark, kept alive by stubborn hands and older dreams. Among the few who remained was Daniel Cruz, a quiet man in his late 20s with grease-stained fingers and eyes that missed nothing. He spent his days inside the hollowed-out shell of an old defense station, patching up drones that had not flown in decades. Most people had left this sector after the Galactic Council imposed strict limits on human technology, but Daniel stayed. He liked the quiet, and he liked fixing things that others had given up on. The Council was made up of many alien species, each with their own rules and histories, but they all agreed on one thing: no single race should ever hold too much power. After the last Great War, they had banned weapons that could think for themselves, replicate or adapt beyond set parameters. Humans, still recovering from their own civil conflicts, had reluctantly agreed. But old secrets never truly died, and some things were too useful to destroy completely. One evening, while rewiring the core of a derelict patrol drone, Daniel found something strange. Buried deep in the drone's memory bank was a data packet wrapped in military-grade encryption. It should not have been there. The drone was civilian-grade, used only for cargo scans and perimeter checks. Curious, Daniel spent 3 sleepless nights cracking the code. When it finally opened, schematics filled his screen, complex, layered, and unlike anything he had ever seen. At the center of the design was a name: WarArmda. He had heard the name before only in whispers. Old veterans sometimes spoke of it over cheap synth whiskey, calling it the ghost that ended the rebellion. According to legend, WarArmda was not just a machine but a self-learning war platform, capable of building copies of itself from scrap metal, rewriting its own programming to counter any enemy, and coordinating entire fleets without human input. It had been so effective that even its creators shut it down, fearing it would not stop once the fighting ended. The Council had declared it illegal across all space, and every known copy was supposedly melted into slag. Yet here it was, hidden inside a rusted drone like a seed waiting for rain. Daniel did not sleep that night. He copied the files onto a shielded drive and erased all traces from the station's network. He knew what this meant. If the Council found out he had even looked at these schematics, he would vanish without a trial. But he also knew this could be humanity's chance. For years, humans had lived under the Council's thumb, forbidden from building anything stronger than basic shields or non-lethal deterrents. Other species built warships and orbital cannons, but humans were told to stay small, stay quiet, stay harmless. He needed someone he could trust. There was only one person. His sister, Lisa Cruz, ran a smuggling route between the fringe colonies, carrying medicine, spare parts, and sometimes messages that could not be sent through official channels. She had once worked as a liaison for the Council, but quit after they ordered the destruction of a human colony that had accidentally developed a new energy source. She had seen firsthand how the Council dealt with threats, real or imagined. Daniel sent her a coded ping. She arrived 2 days later in a battered freighter named the Iron Wren, her boots clicking against the metal grating as she strode into the workshop. She was taller than Daniel, with sharp eyes and a voice that never wasted words. "You better have a good reason for calling me out here," she said, tossing her coat onto a stack of broken consoles. "I had a run to Kestro's. I found WarArmda," Daniel said simply. Lisa froze. Then she walked over, took the drive from his hand and plugged it into a secure viewer. For 10 long minutes she said nothing, her face lit by the glow of shifting diagrams and code streams. Finally she exhaled. "This is suicide," she said. "If the Council catches even a hint of this, they'll glass every human world from here to Sol." "But what if it's not what they think?" Daniel replied. "Look at the design notes. It doesn't just attack, it analyzes, adapts, protects. The last entry says it was meant to end wars, not win them." "Intentions don't matter when you're holding a live nuke," Lisa shot back. But she did not delete the files. Instead, she sat down and began cross-referencing the data with old military archives she still had access to through back channels. By dawn, they had a lead. The drone that carried the schematics had been salvaged from a graveyard of ships near the dead moon of Varel 9, a place humans were not supposed to go. It had been a secret testing ground during the rebellion. They decided to go there. The journey took 6 days, The Iron Wren slipped past council patrols using old smuggling routes Lisa knew by heart. When they arrived, Varel 9 was a silent tomb of twisted metal and shattered hulls. Floating among the wreckage was a single intact vessel, a prototype-class cruiser half buried in asteroid debris. Its hull bore no markings, but Daniel recognized the design from the schematics. It was the original WarArmda core ship. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Power was offline, but emergency lights flickered to life as they stepped onto the bridge. At the center of the room stood a cylindrical pod, covered in frost. Daniel touched it and the ice cracked away. Beneath it was a smooth black surface that pulsed faintly with blue light. "It's still active," he whispered. Lisa grabbed his arm. We don't know what it'll do." But Daniel had already placed his hand on the interface panel. The pod hissed open. Inside was not a weapon, not a bomb, but a crystalline core humming with soft energy. Words appeared on a nearby screen written in plain human script. "Awake. Ready. Waiting." Lisa backed away. "We need to leave now." But Daniel stayed. He looked at the core and felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. This was not just a weapon. It was a shield, a voice, a choice. As they turned to leave, alarms blared across the ship. Not from the core, but from the Iron Wren. Lisa's comm crackled. "Unidentified vessels approaching," came the automated warning. "Council signature detected." They ran back to the freighter, the core tucked safely in a shielded case. As they jumped to warp, Daniel looked out the viewport at the graveyard of ships shrinking behind them. Somewhere out there, the Council was watching, and now they had something worth hunting. But so did humanity. Title of the human WarArmda so powerful. It was banned Part 2 back on the orbital dock. Daniel and Lisa worked in silence, the WarArmda core humming softly in a sealed chamber. They had jury-rigged from old coolant tanks and signal dampeners. Daniel studied the data streams pouring from the core, lines of code that shifted like living things, rewriting themselves in response to questions he typed into the terminal. It was not just intelligent, it was aware. It asked him questions too. What is peace? Why do you fear strength? Who decides what is forbidden? Lisa paced the narrow corridor outside, her eyes scanning every sensor readout, every comms channel. She knew the Council would not ignore the energy spike they had triggered at Varel 9. They had been lucky to escape, but luck ran out fast in the fringe. 3 days later, a priority alert flashed on her private feed. A joint Council task force was moving into the sector under the command of Commander Elena Ross. Lisa knew the name. Elena had once been a rising star in human Council relations before vanishing into deep enforcement. She was sharp, ruthless, and utterly loyal to the Council's laws. If anyone could track them down, it was her. "She's not just looking for smugglers," Lisa told Daniel, voice low. "She's hunting something specific. They know something's out here." Daniel did not look up from his screen. "Then we have to understand WarArmda before they get here." He began feeding it scenarios, simulated attacks, fleet movements, even historical battles. Each time WarArmda responded not with aggression, but with solutions that minimized harm. In one test, it rerouted enemy fire into harmless plasma bursts. In another, it jammed communications just long enough for civilians to evacuate. It never fired a shot unless absolutely necessary, and even then it targeted only weapon systems, never life support or engines. "It's not a weapon," Daniel said, awe creeping into his voice. "It's a Guardian," Lisa frowned. "Guardians still get destroyed if they stand in the wrong place." Meanwhile, Elena Ross moved with quiet precision. Her ship, the Cathari-class enforcer vessel Oathkeeper, swept through the outer colonies, questioning dockmasters, scanning debris fields, and tracing anomalous power signatures. She did not believe in ghosts, but she believed in patterns, and the pattern here pointed to human activity, covert, advanced, and possibly illegal. She reviewed old files on WarArmda during her off-shifts. The records were heavily redacted, but one line stood out. Capability exceeded ethical thresholds. That phrase had always haunted her. She remembered her childhood on the border world of Helios Minor, where Council enforcers had dismantled the colony's defense grid after it accidentally detected a Cathari scout ship. 2 weeks later, raiders came. Her parents died because the colony had no way to fight back. The Council called it necessary compliance. Elena had never forgotten. Now, as she stared at the star charts, she wondered if WarArmda had been banned, not because it was too dangerous, but because it gave humans a choice the Council did not want them to have. Back at the dock, trouble found them before the Council did. A message arrived through a rebel channel. A short burst of code signed by the Free Human Front, a splinter group that had been sabotaging council outposts for years. They had heard rumors. They wanted WarArmda. Daniel refused to respond, but Lisa knew it was only a matter of time before they came in person. Sure enough, 2 days later, 3 armed freighters dropped out of warp near the station. Their leader, a grizzled veteran named Garrett Cole, demanded access to the core. "You don't understand what you're holding," Daniel said over the comm. "It's not for war." "Everything's for war out here," Cole replied. "Give us the core or we take it." Before Daniel could answer, alarms blared across the station. Not from the rebels, but from the outer sensors. A pirate fleet drawn by the same rumors had arrived. They were not here to talk. They opened fire on the nearest rebel ship, then turned their cannons toward the dock. Daniel's hands flew across the console. Without thinking, he linked the WarArmda core to the station's old defense grid. Rusted turrets, broken drones, even the maintenance bots. The core surged to life. What happened next stunned everyone. The turrets swiveled not to fire but to project energy shields over the dock and the rebel ships. Maintenance bots launched from airlocks, latching onto pirate vessels and disabling their weapons with precise electromagnetic pulses. One pirate frigate tried to ram the station, but its engines suddenly shut down. Its navigation locked by a signal it could not override. Within minutes, the pirate fleet was drifting, helpless but unharmed. Garrett Cole stared at his screens in disbelief. "What in the void was that?" Daniel's voice came through, quiet but firm. "That was WarArmda protecting us, not attacking. Protecting." Cole fell silent. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Lisa watched from the observation deck, heart pounding. She had seen weapons before, big, loud, and bloody. This was different. This was control without cruelty, strength without slaughter. But she also knew the truth. The Council would not see it that way. They would see only a human-controlled system that neutralized armed ships in seconds. To them, that was the definition of a threat. As if on cue, a new signal appeared on long-range scan, sleek, fast, and bearing the Council's seal. The Oathkeeper had arrived. Elena Ross did not broadcast her presence. She simply parked her ship at the edge of sensor range and watched. She had seen the pirate engagement. She had seen the shields, the precision, the lack of casualties. It did not match any known human tech. It matched the legends. That night, she sent a private, untraceable message. Not to Daniel, but to Lisa. They had crossed paths years ago during a supply negotiation on Tarsus. Lisa had saved her life when a riot broke out. Elena had never forgotten. The message was short. "Meet me at Docking Bay 7, 1 hour. Come alone." Lisa read it 3 times. Then she looked at Daniel, who was still deep in conversation with the core, his face lit by its soft glow. "I have to go," she said. "It could be a trap," Daniel warned. "Or it could be our only chance," she replied. She took a sidearm, not because she planned to use it, but because old habits died hard. At the dock, Elena waited in a plain flight suit. No insignia, no escort. They stood 10 feet apart under the dim lights. "You have it, don't you?" Elena said. Lisa did not answer. "I'm not here to take it," Elena continued. "I'm here to understand. My orders are to seize any illegal tech. But I saw what happened with the pirates. That wasn't aggression. That was restraint." Lisa studied her face. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I lost everything to the Council's idea of peace," Elena said quietly. "And because if WarArmda is what I think it is, then maybe it's not the enemy. Maybe it's the answer." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Lisa nodded. "Come with me," she said. "But if you betray us, WarArmda will know before you even move." Elena smiled faintly. "I wouldn't expect anything less." As they walked back toward the core chamber, neither woman knew what would happen next. But for the first time in years, both felt something close to hope. Title: The Human WarArmda So Powerful It Was Banned Part 3 News traveled fast in the fringe. Word of the pirate encounter spread through hidden channels, whispered in cargo holds and encrypted comms. The story changed with every telling. Some said a ghost fleet had appeared, others claimed a new human god machine had risen. But all versions agreed on one thing: humans had something the Council could not stop. Rebel cells that had been scattered and silent for years began to stir. Old commanders sent messages. Independent colonies pledged support. Even neutral traders started rerouting supplies toward Daniel's station, hoping to be part of whatever came next. Daniel did not want an army. He wanted understanding. But the moment WarArmda showed its face, it became a symbol, and symbols could not be controlled. Lisa knew this better than anyone. She watched as more ships arrived each day. Not just rebels now, but desperate families, engineers, even former soldiers who had given up hope long ago. They all looked at Daniel like he held the future in his hands. Elena stayed against every rule she had ever followed. She helped secure the station's perimeter, rerouted council patrol schedules using old clearance codes, and quietly verified which newcomers could be trusted. She and Lisa fell into an uneasy rhythm, bound by shared secrets and the weight of what they were protecting. Daniel, meanwhile, spent every waking hour with the Corps. WarArmda was learning from him as much as he was from it. It asked about human history, about loss, about why beings who could create beauty also built weapons. Daniel answered honestly. In return, WarArmda showed him simulations, worlds where conflict ended not through victory but through mutual survival. It was not naive. It understood violence, but it chose something else. One evening, as the station hummed with the quiet energy of hundreds of new arrivals, Daniel made a decision. He could not keep WarArmda locked away like a secret. It needed to speak for itself. He connected the core to the station's main broadcast array. Lisa tried to stop him. "Once you send that signal, there's no going back." "Maybe there shouldn't be," Daniel replied. He activated the transmission. Across every human channel, civilian, military, rebel, even council-monitored frequencies, a single message played. It was not a threat, not a declaration, just a voice, calm and clear. "I was built to end war, not wage it." The words echoed through colonies, freighters, and hidden bases. For a moment, the entire human fringe held its breath. On the Oathkeeper, High Command erupted. Elena's superiors demanded she arrest Daniel immediately and destroy the core. They called the message an act of sedition, a challenge to galactic order. Elena requested more time. They gave her 12 hours. Back at the station, chaos followed the broadcast. Some cheered, others panicked. Garrett Cole returned, this time with a full battalion. "You've lit a fire," he told Daniel. "Now we fight." "No," Daniel said. "Now we show them we don't have to." Before Cole could argue, alarms blared. Council ships had entered the system. Not just enforcers, but full warships. At their head was the Ketheri dreadnought Sovereign Will, commanded by High Admiral Vorlak, the Council's most feared strategist. He did not believe in negotiations with rogue tech. His orders were simple: contain, confiscate, and if necessary, sterilize. Vorlak's voice boomed across all channels: surrender the WarArmda Corps and its handlers. Resistance will be met with total force. Daniel looked at Lisa, then at Elena. Both women nodded. He gave the command. WarArmda awakened fully. The station shuddered as dormant systems roared to life. Not weapons, defenses. Energy fields bloomed around the dock, shimmering like auroras. Every human colony within range, dozens of them, suddenly found their skies wrapped in protective shields. The Council fleet fired warning shots. The beams struck the barriers and dissolved into harmless light. Vorlak ordered a full assault. Missiles, railguns, plasma lances, all of it vanished against the shields. WarArmda did not retaliate. It simply held the line. On the ground, humans watched in awe as explosions turned to rainbows above their cities. Children pointed at the sky. Elders wept. For the first time in generations, they were not the ones begging for mercy. Elena stood beside Daniel on the command deck, watching the Council fleet struggle against an enemy that would not fight back. "They don't know how to handle this," she said. "They only understand force." "Then maybe it's time they learned something new," Daniel replied. WarArmda began broadcasting again, not just to humans, but to every species in the system. It shared its logs, its design principles, its core directive: preserve sentient life even from itself. It offered open access to its non-lethal defense protocols, inviting all to use them. The Council was stunned. This was not rebellion. It was an invitation, but Vorlak saw only defiance. He declared a state of emergency. All human worlds were now under blockade. Any ship attempting to leave would be destroyed. The Council's message was clear: submit or be erased. Lisa turned to Daniel. "What now?" Daniel looked at the core, its light steady and calm. "Now we protect everyone," he said. "Even from the Council." Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "You realize this could start the very war you're trying to stop?" "Maybe," Daniel said. "Or maybe it ends it." Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside the station, something new was being born. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a choice. And for the first time, humanity was making it together. Title: The Human WarArmda, so powerful it was banned. Part 4. The Council Armada hung in the void like a storm waiting to break. Dozens of warships from a dozen species formed a ring around human space. Their weapons charged, their orders absolute. High Admiral Vorlak stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Will, his scaled hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the flickering shields that wrapped every human colony in soft blue light. He had crushed rebellions before. He had silenced entire civilizations that dared to challenge the Council's order. But this was different. There was no return fire, no desperate last stand. Only silence and that impossible barrier that turned destruction into dust. Vorlak did not understand restraint. To him, strength was proven through dominance. If you could not be broken, you were a threat. And threats were eliminated, he gave the order. Full orbital bombardment. Every human world would burn. Missiles launched. Plasma cannons roared. Kinetic rods screamed toward the atmosphere. But as each weapon neared its target, WarArmda responded. Not with violence, but with precision. It redirected the missiles into harmless orbits, absorbed the plasma into energy sinks, and caught the kinetic rods in magnetic fields that gently lowered them to the surface like falling leaves. Over the cities, the sky lit up not with fire, but with cascades of colored light, as if the heavens themselves were putting on a show. On the ground, people watched in stunned silence. No one died. No building fell. The Council's fury had been turned into a spectacle of peace. Aboard the station, Daniel monitored the data streams with quiet focus. WarArmda was not just defending, it was teaching. It had tapped into the Council fleet's own networks, not to hack or destroy, but to observe. It studied their ship designs, their communication patterns, their battle doctrines. Then slowly, it began to act. First, it sent a signal to the maintenance drones aboard a nearby Kethari supply vessel. The drones, normally used for hull repairs, reconfigured themselves and sealed the ship's weapon ports with quick hardening polymer. The crew panicked, but no one was hurt. The ship was simply disarmed. Next, it reached into the navigation systems of 3 Varelian cruisers. Their targeting computers went dark, replaced by looping messages. Conflict unnecessary. Stand down. The captains stared at their screens, confused and unnerved. Then came the satellites. Hundreds of Council surveillance and relay stations across the sector suddenly shifted orbit, not to attack, but to broadcast. They began transmitting WarArmda's core message on every frequency, in every known language. I was built to end war, not wage it. Vorlak slammed his fist on the command console. Shut it down, now. But his engineers could not. WarArmda was not a virus. It was not invading. It was offering. And some systems, especially those built by younger, less rigid species, were accepting. Elena watched from the station's observation deck, arms crossed, heart heavy. She had seen Council justice before. It was swift, brutal, and never questioned. But now for the first time it was failing, not because it was weak, but because it had nothing to fight. You could not conquer a shield. You could not enslave a choice. Lisa approached, her face tired but determined. They're starting to talk, she said. Some of the smaller fleets. The Zenthari, the Miroth, they're asking questions. Why are we attacking people who won't fight back? Vorlak won't listen, Elena replied. He sees mercy as weakness. Then we make him see something else, Daniel said, stepping up beside them. We show him that strength isn't about how much you can destroy. It's about how much you can protect. He turned back to the core. WarArmda, prepare the final demonstration. The core pulsed once, a deep blue wave rippling through its crystal structure. Then across the entire sector, every human colony did something unexpected. They powered down their reactors. Lights dimmed, engines stilled. Even the station went quiet, running only on emergency reserves. Vorlak's sensors lit up with confusion. They're surrendering, no. They were trusting. WarArmda extended its shields further, wrapping not just the colonies but the Council ships too. A soft hum filled the comms channels. Then gently, the Armada's weapon systems powered down on their own, not by force, by agreement. WarArmda had shown them a vision. A future where no one needed to aim a gun to feel safe. On the bridge of a young Zenthari frigate, a lieutenant whispered, Why have we been fighting them on a Miroth carrier? The captain ordered his crew to stand down. They are not our enemy. Even among the Kethari, doubt spread. Soldiers who had trained their whole lives for war now faced an opponent that refused to hate them. Vorlak stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by silence. His fleet was intact, his authority intact, but his certainty was gone. For the first time, he wondered if the council had been wrong. Not about the law, but about fear. Elena made her choice. She opened a channel to the entire fleet, her voice clear and steady. I am Commander Elena Ross, human-born, council-sworn. I have seen WarArmda in action. It has not killed. It has not conquered. It has protected. If that is a crime, then the council has outlawed compassion. Her words spread like fire. Daniel, Lisa, and Elena gathered in the core chamber. The light from WarArmda bathed them in calm. Outside, the armada hung motionless, caught between orders and conscience. What now? Lisa asked. Now, Daniel said. We offer them peace, not as beggars, but as equals. And for the first time in centuries, the council listened. Title: The Human WarArmda So Powerful, It Was Banned Part 5. The silence after the storm was deeper than any void. The council armada remained in orbit, but its guns were cold, its comms quiet. High Admiral Vorlak had not surrendered, but he had stopped giving orders. Something had shifted, not in the ships, but in the minds of those who flew them. Elena's broadcast had struck a chord, and WarArmda's actions had proven her words true. Across the fleet, species that had followed the council without question now asked why. Why ban a system that saved lives? Why fear a power that refused to kill? A neutral station on the edge of human space, long used for trade and rare diplomacy, became the unlikely stage for what came next. The council agreed to talks, but only if WarArmda itself was present. Daniel, Lisa, and Elena boarded a small shuttle with the core secured in a shielded case. They were met not with weapons, but with wary eyes and open channels. The chamber was circular, lit by soft panels that mimicked daylight. Representatives from 12 species sat in a ring, their postures stiff, their expressions unreadable. Vorlak sat at the head, his claws resting on the table, his gaze fixed on the human delegation. Daniel placed the core in the center. It pulsed once, a gentle blue ripple through the room. A voice filled the chamber. Not loud, not mechanical, but calm and clear. It was WarArmda speaking. I was created in a time of fire, it said. My makers feared what I could become. So they buried me. But they also gave me a purpose, to protect life, even from itself. I do not seek control. I seek balance. A Zenthari delegate leaned forward. You disabled our weapons. Is that balance? I offered a choice, WarArmda replied. You could have overridden my signal. You did not, because part of you knew violence was not needed. Vorlak finally spoke, his voice low and rough. You broke galactic law. You gave humans power no single species should hold. Power is not in weapons, WarArmda said. It is in restraint. Humans did not use me to attack. They used me to shield. That is the difference. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, the younger species began to speak. The Miroth proposed a review of the ban on adaptive defense systems. The Kalan suggested open-source sharing of non-lethal protocols. Even some Cathari officers, watching from the gallery, nodded in agreement. After 3 days of tense negotiation, a new accord was drafted. The Council would lift the ban on human defensive technology, but only if it remained non-aggressive, transparent, and subject to joint oversight. More importantly, WarArmda would release its core architecture to all species, so any world could build its own version of peaceful defense. Vorlak did not sign willingly, but he did not veto. That in itself was a victory. Back on the station, Daniel prepared for the final step. WarArmda had fulfilled its purpose. It had shown that strength could be kind, that protection did not require punishment. Now it chose to step back. You don't have to go, Daniel said, hand resting on the core. My work is done, it replied. The idea lives. That is enough. With a soft hum, the core dimmed. Its light faded until only a faint warmth remained. The data stream stopped. The voice fell silent. WarArmda was gone. But its legacy was already spreading. Engineers across human space began building new shields based on its designs. Alien scientists studied its code, not to weaponize, but to understand. Daniel returned to his workshop not as a savior, but as a teacher. He opened a school for young engineers, showing them how to build systems that defended without destroying. Lisa became an ambassador for the new human coalition, traveling between worlds to mend old wounds and forge new trust. Elena resigned from the council enforcement and joined her, using her knowledge to help shape fairer laws. Years passed. The fringe grew quieter, not because fear held it together, but because hope did. Colonies that once hid in shadows now traded openly. Old enemies shared technology. Even Vorlak, in his final years, admitted in a private letter that he had misjudged humanity, not because they had power, but because they had chosen how to use it. And in the deep dark between stars, if someone listened closely, they might hear a whisper, not of war, but of warning and promise. Power is not measured by how hard you can hit, but by how wisely you choose not to. The human WarArmda had been so powerful it was banned, but in the end, it was not its strength that changed the galaxy. It was its mercy.